Welcome into A to Z on Monday, July the 15th. Thanks for hanging out with us for another episode of the Primetime Program. Jeff Simmons spoke to the media, spoke to some media for the first time, some local media for the first time all offseason today when he made an appearance on 104.5 The Zone with Ramon, Kayla, and Will. They covered a variety of different subjects, but probably the most hot button topic that they covered was the status of Tandre Sweat, the rookie defensive tackle who is coming in to provide Jeff some support, if not relief, in his duties up front. And of course, Tandre Sweat's availability and readiness have been at the forefront of a lot of Titans fans' minds, thinking about the way that this team needs to be put together and needs to come together before the regular season begins. So you'll hear from Jeff Simmons. We will talk about Hop or Higgins. It's a version of the conversation that the morning show had earlier today, discussing the idea of extending DeAndre Hopkins or waiting and pursuing T. Higgins as a 2025 free agent. We've got In Case You Missed It with Bert at the end of the show, who is good to pull himself away just barely from his NCAA 25 video game that he has been playing, or NCAA 24 video game that he's been playing. So we'll get to that here in just a second. And we'll have a good time doing all of those things that I just mentioned. Before we get started, need you guys to share the broadcast around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Bo Blaker says, Buck, quick side note for your Oh No of the week, which is, of course, a Tuesday staple, the national anthem that was just sung for the Home Run Derby. I, until you just now at this very moment mentioned this, forgot that the Home Run Derby was on tonight. Home Run Derby. Let's see if we can get it queued up here, and I'll keep tabs on that event with you guys as well. I assume it's on ESPN. There it is. I'm sorry that I missed a cringy national anthem. Those are always good for Oh No fodder. Either way, we have a lot of good things to talk about. People pleading for Bert to tell them all the lovely things about the NCAA video game, the NCAA football game that we will get. Dylan Cole says it's not an NCAA game. That is an important clarification. It is no longer an NCAA game. Now it is EA Sports college football. So in lieu of what was the last NCAA football game, 14, we will get a full review from Bert because, of course, I am probably not going to get the video game. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this thing started. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. Hello, lovely to have you. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com for more information. You can go to TrueMav Fitness for your first workout free at the best workout facility in Middle Tennessee, truemavfitness.com for all their membership options. And Zen Sports, download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, get up to $100 on your no danger first wager in the Zen Sports app. So Jeff Simmons has not been available for the offseason program. He was at the facility for mandatory minicamp, though he did not do on-field work. He did not speak publicly at a press conference setting or in a scrum setting with local media at any point in the offseason because, of course, if you're not practicing, you don't have to deal with us vultures. So since the offseason period has begun, the real offseason period where there's no football activities whatsoever for the better part of 6 weeks, Jeff has been making more rounds with national media outlets. I saw he did a couple of podcasts. I saw he did the Rich Eisen show. And on the heels of that media tour, he made an appearance on Ramon, Kayla, and Will this morning on 104.5 The Zone. They covered a variety of different topics, including that of Tandre Sweat. Now, Tandre Sweat, of course, is an interesting figure. He's probably one of the most polarizing figures on this football team, and he has yet to even take a snap for all the reasons that we've talked about. We have talked about the idea that he was one of the biggest wild cards in the NFL draft, to use some language that Dane Brugler used when he made an appearance on the radio show with me a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about that very subject. So with all the stuff hovering out there about Tandre Sweat, of which I'll let you hear from Dane Brugler here in just a second, Jeff Simmons brought some clarity to the situation. So we'll let you hear that here in just a second. We'll ask you first. Well, let's let you hear from Dane Brugler first on Tandre Sweat as a draft prospect, and then we'll let you hear from Jeff Simmons on that very same subject.
Didn't love the opportunity cost situation that they may have had with Sweat at the pick that they took him at.
Tandre Sweat was one of the wild cards of the draft. He really was, because everything that you just mentioned, he has, for a guy that's 360 some pounds, for him to be able to move like he can, it's just, there's only so much you can do if you're a center or a blocker trying to slow him down. But it all comes down to, can you trust him? And that's something that there's several red flags. You go back to on and off the field. He's a fifth-year senior. His first 4 years at Texas combined, he had a grand total of 9.5 tackles for loss. So single-digit tackles for loss. Why not the production until your fifth and final year? Why did it take 5 years for you to kind of get your act together? I mean, he was open with scouts that he maybe was kind of enjoying the college life a little too much as an underclassman with the Longhorns. And that was something that scouts talked about often, about how off the field, he loved the party. It was a part of what he did. And throughout the draft process, Tandre Sweat, when he was meeting with teams and talking with scouts, he did a lot to kind of convince teams that, hey, I'm ready to be a professional. I've turned over a new leaf, and I'm kind of matured. But then 2 weeks or 3 weeks before the draft, he gets a DWI, and it's like, okay, is this guy just telling us what we want to hear, or is this just a blip on his development trajectory? I mean, there's all these red flags with a guy like this who's so talented that it's every team looked at him very differently. He was off a lot of boards around the league. Other teams thought, okay, if he gets to, let's say, the fourth round, we'll feel comfortable drafting him there. There's no way to be sure if the Titans don't draft him in the second round. Would he even still be there in the third round? Or were there other teams ready to take him in the second round? We'll never know for sure how that would play out. But we do know that it is certainly a risk to take it to Tandre Sweat where they took him. But again, if it works out, if he plays up to the level he's capable of, the talent level, if he keeps his nose clean and it truly buys into being a professional at the NFL level, it could look like a steal, because it's a first-round caliber talent with a lot of question marks that scared off a lot of other teams. Every team looks at risk a little bit differently. For the Titans, they saw the talent outweighing some of the risk, at least at that point in the second round. So time will tell. I'm sure we'll revisit this, in the season and then at next.
So that's Dane Brugler going on at some length about Tandre Sweat. Dane Brugler, of course, the top NFL draft analyst for The Athletic. Rashid says on YouTube, Big Jeff filling in the void that Derrick Henry left speaking to the media. Well, I hope that Big Jeff is better than Derrick was speaking to the media over the course of his career, because Derrick, while he did it, was not always the best quote until basically the end, when he knew it was coming to an end here in Tennessee, and did seem a little bit more open with us that way. Todd Apple says, well, let's get your Two Rivers Ford take first and foremost before we read some of these comments. On Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the combo of Tandre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons, understanding that we haven't seen Tandre Sweat practice, play, do anything but make press conference appearances to date? Scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in that combination? It's your Two Rivers Ford take. As always, it is presented by the South's most trusted Ford dealer, Two Rivers Ford. Quality American-made Ford vehicles, award-winning customer service. They always go above and beyond at Two Rivers to put you in the driver's seat as the customer. Nobody makes the car buying process faster, more easy, or more fun than the South's most trusted Ford dealer for over 40 years here in Middle Tennessee, serving hundreds of thousands of Tennesseans over that course of time. Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com, where you can do all kinds of cool things, including checking out their new or certified pre-owned inventory. You can also do what I did, which is custom order your next Ford at tworiversford.com, the same way that I did with my 2022 Ford Explorer. Her nickname is Sugar, and I love her very much. tworiversford.com for more information. So, scale of 1 to 10, your level of confidence in that combination. 5.5, says Karen O'Keefe. 5.5 for Jonathan Caverly. Also is for Simmons' half of the combo. 5 for Chosen. 4.8. Says Dylan Cole. Stephen King says 8.824. Let's not sweat this. Joshua Hoffman says Sweat should be fine. Yeah, there's no reason yet to indicate that Sweat will or will not be fine, frankly. We know nothing about what Tandre Sweat is going to be as a professional athlete because he has done precious little as a professional athlete since being drafted into the NFL. He's been not available at any point throughout the course of the offseason program, save rookie minicamp, and that was 2 months ago, the week after the NFL draft back in May. So there's a lot of this stuff that's just unknown, and we're kind of, we're waiting for Tandre Sweat himself to fill in some of the information gaps there. But also it helps when Jeff Simmons is saying that he has spent some time around Tandre Sweat this offseason, and he is confident about Sweat's availability ahead of training camp, which is what he said in an appearance with Ramon, Kayla, and Will earlier this morning on 104.5 The Zone.
The fact that, he wanted to be good. I could tell his mindset when he in the building, when we was in the meeting rooms, and, we spent a lot of the time in the training room together while everybody was at practice. I could tell that, he want to get to that point where, we could count on him and we could trust him. He was working his tail off just trying to get himself back on the field. No one wanted to be in that training room. And that's one of the things we were just talking about, just take care of your body and let's get back on the field. But I know he'll be ready for training camp. So, but like I said, he's a big dude. When you walk past him and, you shake his hand and, he's a big dude. And I honestly believe that if he could put it all together and, my job as a leader and especially a leader in that room, my job is to push him past the limit that, he think he have. My job is just to help him try to elevate as a player, because at the end of the day, he can help me and I can help him. When we playing together and we're on the same page, like I said, when you have a nose tackle who, when you watch him in college football, he's a dominant nose tackle. He can push the pocket, he can win his one-on-ones, and I don't hate to bring up the past, but sometimes when you look back at it, like, man, just if we had that consistent at that nose position, I think that's where one of the things I talked to him about when we were talking a little bit, just how consistent you can be when you walk into this building, even when the bad days and, not all when you're having a good day or a good game, how can you be a consistent player and, just a consistent guy in the building, because that's where we look for as teammates. We don't want, especially when you got some guys that up and down. Of course, sometimes guys just wake up and be like, I don't want to be bothered. But as a leader, with me, I just try to go in the building and, try to give the guys the same thing that they get when I have a 2-sack game versus, no sacks. I've just been happy for your teammates. So that's one of the things, we just talked about, and me just trying to help him, see and feel the locker room as a young guy, because, we drafted him for a reason. We count on him to come in and help us play, help us win games, especially in the inside of the pocket. Because, and more than anybody, how much I talk about pushing the pocket, and especially talking about in our division, you got all these skilled quarterback now that can run the ball and also throwing the ball pretty well. So at the end of the day, in order for us to win, especially on defense, we drafted him for a reason. I'm expecting big things out of him.
Tennessee Titans.
I'm muted. That is Jeff Simmons on with Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Earlier this morning, you can check out 104.5 The Zone's YouTube channel to see the full interview with Jeff. I know they covered a lot of ground there. So in particular, him mentioning how much time they spent together in the training room during the offseason program, because they're both rehabbing various things at this point, which we were told they were the players that were not available during the offseason program were all rehabbing to some extent, working through any number of recovery protocols or what have you, whether it's NPF in his shoulder, whether it's Tandre Sweat and this injury that he's been dealing with. I know Jeff at the end of the year was shut down for an ankle injury. So that's kind of where things are at right now with Tandre Sweat, based on those Jeff Simmons comments. A to Z Sports Primetime is presented by TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrueMathFitness.com for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated. TrueMath always puts you in position to succeed. The coaching staff is great. Like I tell you guys all the time, there is no need to be intimidated. If you have been out of the gym for some time and you're trying to get back into the swing of things, their coaching staff is excellent. I can vouch for them personally. I go to TrueMath for personal training on Fridays, except for this Friday because Worth is out of town for a family trip to Florida, but I forgive him for that. Either way, TrueMathFitness.com for the best workout in Middle Tennessee and all of their great membership options. So scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in the combo of Jeff Simmons and Tandre Sweat? You know, it's tough for me to answer my own question, and I don't want to not answer the question, even though I've asked you guys to, because for the same reason that it's tough for you all to answer the question, we haven't seen anything from Sweat. And I like, it's great to hear all those things from Jeffrey Simmons. And Jeffrey Simmons is the kind of person that you want mentoring him and showing him how to be a professional athlete in all the different ways that Jeff had to learn. Bit of a trial by fire situation when he was drafted here as well. Not totally similar circumstances when they were drafted because, of course, Jeff had the domestic situation dating back to, I think that was a high school incident prior to him being drafted, or maybe his freshman year at Mississippi State. That, of course, was broadcast everywhere when the Tennessee Titans took him 19th overall. The Titans had to do a very good job, a very specific job vetting this player, especially with a female ownership group or a female controlling ownership group and Amy Adams Strunk. To draft a player with domestic issues in their background, you had to be completely buttoned up, and Jeff has been nothing but a model citizen since that situation. So you like that he has Jeff's vote of confidence there, and that process had already started off the field, even if they weren't both on the field, for us to see these things in real time, the actual football application of it. Chosen says, Big Jeff said a lot about it, but I feel like he knows more about Sweat and is just trying to give fans hope because he knows the media is starting to suspect that Sweat is a bust. Josh says Jeff is a superstar and Sweat is a zero right now. We only know that one of them at the moment will show up. And I think Joshua and I have similar feelings on that right now. All the concerns around Sweat are absolutely worth discussing. They're discussing, not disgusting, but discussing, because they are valid concerns, right? They'd be valid for any player who came in with that kind of a track record, for lack of a better term, around their physical conditioning, around their lack of productivity outside of the 1 year as a fifth-year senior, with the DWI situation. All of those things are worth talking about before we actually see how Sweat does the Jeff thing, which is, hey, all right, just prove them wrong in terms of who you are and what you're capable of and the work ethic that you're going to bring to turn this thing around. Not that he's in like some kind of dire situation or anything like that, but there is something to the perception of the player right now. And whether perception actually equals reality or not, there's been nothing about Sweat's reality to disprove the perception to date. And so we are all just waiting, fans, media, players, coaches alike, to see how Tandre Sweat goes about disproving this particular narrative. Will it happen in training camp? Well, that's what the opportunity for Jeff or for Tandre Sweat holds. It's basically a fresh start, even though the offseason program didn't go to plan. That's the way that this thing can be rectified. Eric Alonso says Buck has a new Titan to pick on. Talking about Sweat. I don't know. It's never picking on. Like, it's analysis, and whether players consider it constructive criticism or not is entirely up to them. But it's never meant. It never comes from a place of personal malice or vitriol. It's just, hey, if you don't perform, we're going to talk about it. And to date, there has been no performance of Sweat to evaluate, which is why he continues to be a talking point, right, wrong, or indifferent. So let's move on and let's talk about the franchise tag extension deadline passing today at 3 p.m. Central Time, the same time that the NCAA, I keep calling it NCAA football, even though it's not, EA College Football 24 came out at 3 p.m. today. The deadline to extend players who are franchise tagged passed at 3 p.m. today, and it passed without T. Higgins receiving a contract extension the way that several other players, I think every other player who was franchise tagged by their respective team, whether it was Kyle Duggar, the safety for the Patriots, or Michael Pittman Jr., the wide receiver for the Colts. Pretty sure T. Higgins was the only player who got tagged prior to free agency who did not receive that extension. So the question, and I'm borrowing from the morning show, but I do think it's an interesting discussion, is would you rather extend DeAndre Hopkins or pursue T. Higgins at a top of tier 2 market contract, assuming that he's healthy and plays, relatively well? I would say, if he has a 1,000-yard season, he doesn't have to play in all 17 games, but if he has a 1,000-yard season, he's probably going to be due one of these tier 2 wide receiver, top of market tier 2 wide receiver contracts the same way that Calvin Ridley got. So would you rather extend Hop or pursue Higgins? We'll talk about those things together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is presented by Zen Sports. Download the app. You can bet on the Home Run Derby, the All-Star Game, and all your favorite major sports in the Zen Sports app. Download it today. Plug in that promo code ATOZTN. Get up to $100 on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions, of course, do apply. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 plus and in the state of Tennessee to bet at Zen Sports. Hop or Higgins? What is your preference here? Robert Wright says drop Boyd and pick up Higgins. Okay, but that's not the scenario. I'm asking you Hop or Higgins because Hopkins is going to be more expensive than Boyd, and you are not going to have as much cap space as you had when you gave Calvin Ridley $92 million this offseason. Titans Kyle says Higgins 2025. Jonathan says extend D-Hop halfway through the season. If he continues this level of play, wait for Higgins, etc. If he doesn't, which is fine. Higgins at $30 million and Hop at 15. I'll extend D-Hop. I would not expect DeAndre Hopkins to get $15 million on his next contract. Nor do I necessarily expect Higgins to make $30 million a year. But if Calvin Ridley is making 92 over 4, then you're probably looking at, accounting for some level of inflation. Again, provided that T. Higgins stay healthy, because he has been a hugely productive player until this past season where both he was hurt and his quarterback were hurt. So I think that there will be a lot of interest in T. Higgins, and there should be a lot of interest in T. Higgins from the Titans and anybody else who is in need of wide receiver help, because as you guys know, Hopkins and Boyd are on expiring contracts. Remember that Treylon Burks is still on the roster and is still under cost-effective team control beyond this coming season. But I understand if you're not willing to put any kind of faith in Treylon Burks just yet, in the same way that we're talking about Tandre Sweat. We need to see it before you can believe it. Calvin Ridley is $23 million a year, says Chef Rand. So let's say T. Higgins is $23 to $25 million a year. Would you pursue him at that figure? Bryce Erickson says Treylon won't be a Titan come final roster cuts. Well, one, there are no such thing as final roster cuts. Roster cuts continue all year long. There's no such thing as a final 53-man roster. It's just the initial 53-man roster. And to think that Treylon Burks wouldn't be on the roster, it would take, something short of an act of God for Treylon Burks to not be on this roster this year, no matter how little you think of what he's been able to produce or not. Chef Rand says, don't say the B word, talking about Burks. Chef Rand accuses him of cursing us. Well, no, I think A.J. Brown is the thing that's cursing you, and Treylon Burks has just kind of been a part of that long, it's not a national nightmare, it's a local nightmare, the way that the wide receiver play dropped off after you traded away the most talented wide receiver that the franchise has ever drafted. But that's neither here nor there. We're not here to relitigate that specifically. My preference would be to take the path of DeAndre Hopkins over T. Higgins. And here's why. T. Higgins is definitely a player who is younger. Hopkins is 32 years old. This will be his 32-year-old season. And if you extend him beyond that, obviously, he would be 33 in 2025 or before the 2025 season. So he is obviously a different kind of an asset at his age because there is not that longevity. He's closer to the end of his career than he is the beginning of his career. And that's not to say that the end of his career can't be, I don't want to say as good as the start of his career, because obviously that would not be feasible. But DeAndre Hopkins is a player who I trust to age differently than most wide receivers on the other side of 30, because he plays a different style of game. It's not purely predicated on running by guys or speed. And he's still a high-level athlete. He has taken great measures to make sure that his body can still perform at a high level. And again, he was available in the same way that T. Higgins was not last year. DeAndre Hopkins was available for all 17 games last year, as was Calvin Ridley, to his credit. Now, should that be the only reason that you choose Hopkins over Higgins? No. Here's the reason why I think if you presented me one or the other, because my answer ultimately would be, well, replace your wide receiver help through the draft. You need to grow this thing organically, but you can do that and also keep Hopkins on a cost-effective deal. At some point, you need to start drafting wide receiver help, meaningful wide receiver help, not Kyle Phillips in the 5th round and Jaquan Jackson in the 6th round and who's the UT Chad kid? Colton Dowell in the 7th round, right? Meaningful wide receiver help has to be a part of this team's future. Now, do you have to do it in the 1st round? No. Do you have to do it in the 2nd round? No. But you need to find something viable on a cost-effective contract to where you're not having to go out and pay 4 years, $92 million for a free agent to come in and bolster your roster. Now, does that make me against the Calvin Ridley contract? No. You guys know how I feel about that. The Titans roster was ass the past 2 years. They had to find a way to replace the talent. They're not going to be able to get it to a meaningfully competitive place in just one draft cycle. So Cushenberry, Snead, Ridley, Pollard, all these different contracts that they handed out, and a fair amount of contracts that they handed out with the cap space that they had to spend, makes sense, obviously. But that is not a sustainable way of team building. You guys know this. And that is something that has been proven time in and time out. At some point, you have to regenerate this roster organically. So while I like T. Higgins, and I think he would be an excellent complementary piece here, you're already paying $92 million over 4 years to a player who's probably best suited in Calvin Ridley as a complementary piece. Do you want to pay two guys who are, in ideal situations, complementary players north of $50 million a year in combined average annual salary? I would think not is the case, even as much as you like the idea of T. Higgins, and he's a famous name who's been a part of a successful offense and also was very successful under your head coach, who was formerly his offensive coordinator. Eric Alonso says previous coaching staff was ass also. I think you have to take that by degrees. I understand that recency bias is an easy thing to do. I think that Tim Kelly was not nearly as bad as an offensive coordinator as his roster made him be, right? You can only run so many plays when you're having to keep wide receivers and tackles in to help in obvious passing situations, wide receivers and tight ends in to help your tackles, because your tackles are terrible, both of them, whether it's NPF or Andre Dillard, Dennis Daly, or what have you. Not justifying what Todd Downing or Tim Kelly did, because what was it, 17.5 points per game on average over the course of the last 2 seasons? It's completely unacceptable. Nobody is denying you that. But also you have to account for the fact that the playbook is condensed when you can only run so many plays, because you're having to help on literally every single passing down, because the offensive tackle that you paid $29 million on a 3-year contract and Andre Dillard got benched 3 times in a season. There's only so much that can be done. Andre Bunting says, recency bias, they were trash. I tried to tell y'all, excuse me, I'm going to cough. I tried to tell y'all that Kelly wasn't special when they hired him. That's fine. He didn't have to be special, but you can be an average offensive coordinator and score more than 17 points per game unless you have a left tackle at Andre Dillard. Then it doesn't matter how average to above average to special you are. You can't get anything done when you have the level of offensive line play that you have. So, of course, that has to be taken into account. You're allowed to think whoever you want to sucks in retrospect, as long as the product gets better, right? You can be right if the product gets better, but the product has yet to prove that it is better, and it is something that has to be taken into consideration on why the previous coaching staff on many different fronts, because there was a bunch of failures on a bunch of different fronts. But I don't think that you can completely ignore the context of how things depreciated around the situation when the roster went to shit over the course of the last 2 seasons. So just important context that I think everybody should keep in mind anytime we're having these conversations. All right. Hop or Higgins? I would go Hop. I would understand if you went Higgins. Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network speaking on the Bengals contract negotiation situation with him or lack thereof.
I'm laughing, not having anything to do with T. Higgins. So you're right. We'll be playing on the tag. We'll get a 1-year deal, and then next year be one of the highest profile, most productive, and likely highly paid free agents in the 2025 class, assuming the Bengals don't franchise him a second time. But I'm laughing because you know that I am not the biggest fan of the July 15th deadline, right in the middle of summer when we should be on the golf course grinding for contract news. And thankfully, many teams and agents agreed with me. So many big-time deals got done. We had 9 players either transitioned or franchise tagged. Massive numbers, huge contracts, big trades like Brian Burns. We had talking about the Ravens. We had Justin Madubuike. We had plenty. We have L'Jarius Sneed getting traded. A lot of huge deals. Just they all happened, over the course of the last 4 months, not over the course of the last couple of days. So let's say you were someone who wanted to play golf either like yesterday or today or somewhere in that vicinity. It'd actually be a fine time to do it. At least, tweet the T. Higgins news and then go play golf if that's.
And every time one of those deals got done, Ian texted in the Insiders group text, cross another one off for July 15th. He's been rooting this on.
I just wonder how he hit him today.
Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network on the NFL Network talking about the T. Higgins contract. We'll wrap things up with Bert, and in case you missed it, I'll remind you that the Primetime Show is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com, get your dream address without the stress, and make sure that you don't sell without the intel that only the official real estate agent of the Nashville Predators can provide. GaryAshton.com for more information. All right, Bert, what you got?
All right, let's make this quick. I'm in half. All right.
Okay.
What you want to know? So my question today is, if you didn't know, it has been 10 long years since a college football game has graced our video game systems. And today, if you were lucky enough, rich enough to pay for the pre-order, you get to play the game 3 days early. And when I tell you that it went live at 3 o'clock and I have not been looking at a screen since 3 o'clock, I'm also going to tell you that my program's only lost 1 game. That was on the road against Louisville, but that's not here nor there. The question today is, if you were going to pick a team in college football 25 to bring to prominence, it has to be a shitty team, though. All of you people out there that are getting ready to say, I want to be a volunteer, you got to earn that right. You got to earn that right. You think Josh Heupel just became the head coach of the Volunteers? No. He had to go to UCF. He had to work his way up. You got to pick a shitty team. So who is the shitty team that you would bring to prominence this year? Right now, I am currently the head coach of Jacksonville State. My name is Donkey Teeth Smith. I'm a former Arena League champion. He's 7 foot tall and 400 pounds. And if you're not telling me that's not a good recruiting tool, you're gonna let Donkey Teeth come in your house. God. You're gonna let Donkey Teeth come in your house and not say you're gonna sign. He might eat all of your livestock. Who knows?
A lot of people submitting ECU, Bert's alma mater. A lot of people submitting Vanderbilt. Chef Rand says Colorado easy because they have been shitty and they were not good last year and don't figure to be that much in the mix. Bo Blaker says Indiana counts as a rebuild. Yeah, I mean, but Indiana rebuilding to what? Indiana football has never mattered. So it would fit this category. Bert, I did used to play the NCAA college football game, and I would only ever use Notre Dame. So I'm exactly the kind of thing that you hate. I'm not starting from the bottom. I'm not starting from a shitty come up program. I'm not starting as anybody who had to earn anything. I'm getting the best jobs right out of the gate, being super entitled and winning national championships with them anyway.
No, you're not. you're going to Liberty. If you're going to pick a religious fanatic university, you can go to the worst of them all and work your way up. And then if you're good enough and you win enough games at Liberty with Malik Willis, you can go to BYU. And then you can continue to work your way up the religious
university chain.
I'm telling you, there's no easy shortcuts. You know, you've had 10 years to practice, 10 years to pray, 10 years to learn. You got to work your way up from the bottom. And then one day you might get a little bit of that spooky top.
Welcome to Neyland Stadium, one of the biggest and most beautiful settings in all of college football. This big crowd ready to roar. They know when the Volunteers run through that tee, it's showtime. And a rivalry like this is what makes college football great.
One of them is Lucas. One of them is blacked out in the screen.
These guys came to these schools to play in games like this. As we'll see the number 6 team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Tennessee put it on their Twitter. We're good.
3A Sports College Football. I'm Chris Fowler here in the booth with Kirk Herbstreit. I think we've talked long enough, Kirk. Let's get this game going.
Rocky Town, you know how it goes. We all know how it goes.
It's not their fight song, though. I learned that last week.
Yeah, it's like On the Hill or something like that, right?
Down the field.
Down the field. I knew it was a direction and a place.
Yeah, something like that.
Up the hill was close. It's like calling somebody whose name's Tony Troy. You're one letter off. It's close enough.
That's better than what I do to most people. I'm still calling our buddy Z-Tubs Tyler for reasons that are beyond me. Either way, that's Robert Walsh. That's in case you missed it. Now back to the shadows. Enjoy your video game. That's going to do it for us tonight on the Primetime program. Have a great rest of your evening. Radio show tomorrow is going to be a lot of fun from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Speaking of the Vols, we're going to play a game of VFL or VF Hell Nah, and I'm looking forward to that. We'll tell you the terms of it when you join us from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Have a great rest of your evening. I will see you tomorrow morning on the radio show.
This is our cult. This is our team. We bleed blue. This is our cult. Whether win or lose, we love them. For the shoe, beat the Pats. Bye-bye, Belichick. Guten Tag, Germany. Let's go, Colts.